Microsoft reports big earnings, Xbox has a big price increase, and we're getting a Surface event next week. Happy Friday, friends. It's Friday. Hopefully you had a wonderful week. If last week was a slow week, this week was a bombastic week of good and bad information and event information. So there's a lot of heavy topics, not a ton of topics, but there's some big mamba jamba juicy stuff this week. And so let's just kick it off. Hopefully you had a wonderful week. Let's dive into the Tech News Week. So this week, Microsoft dropped its earnings, and overall the company did exceptionally well as a company at a whole at a high level. They had revenue of $70.1 billion, an increase of 13%, and net income was increased to $25.8 billion dues going into the bank account after all bills are paid. The revenue and productivity business processes was $29.9 billion, only up 10%. Revenue in intelligent cloud was $26.8 billion, an increase of 21%. We'll talk more about that here in a second. And revenue in more personal computing, which includes Windows and OEM/Surface devices, Xbox, and a lot of the things you probably care about if you're listening to this, was $13.4 billion, an increase of 6%. So that is some pretty heavy numbers. There's a lot going on here. So I listened to the entire earnings call, as I typically do, but one of the real interesting things here is that the cloud growth really exploded. It was up 21%, beat basically every metric that was expected. And so yeah, that was the big highlight, and the earning point of the call was hey, what's going on with cloud? Is AI stuff taking over? And they kind of had to pull back and say, it wasn't actually really AI that was driving that growth. It was our classic workloads. And then they try to backpedal a little bit and say, what is an AI workload? If somebody uses a little AI here, is that an AI workload? It was their quote unquote classic cloud business growth that really drove Azure and their cloud computing, not necessarily AI and componentry. Something else worth pointing out is that during their earnings call, multiple times it was noted that, hey, their plans for data structure, infrastructure, basically data centers, hasn't really changed. There were a lot of headlines out saying Microsoft was pulling back, if you will, on their explosive growth that we had seen. And Satya Nadella coined it, I think nicely, if you will. He said, look, we don't know where we are in the demand curve. We think we're getting closer to the top. So our spend on data centers hasn't changed from our initial projections of what we were planning to do. And so it kind of pushed back on a lot of the headlines that Microsoft was walking away from data centers, but they really were just saying this is our initial plan, and that's where things are at. So overall, a fantastic quarter. We'll talk about Xbox stuff a little bit more in detail in the Xbox section of this podcast. Let's move on to Windows. So Windows is getting a new advanced panel. Now, there's not super advanced stuff in here, but you'll find higher level componentry. I don't know, more advanced componentry, which is a great name for an advanced section, like the end tasks, some tweaking of File Explorer, enabling remote desktops, some of the virtual workspace stuff. So nothing too crazy, but just some pretty minor things. Also, speaking of Windows 11, by the way, Microsoft is really, and I mean really, making it hard now to bypass things that make you use a local account when installing Windows 11. They have blocked another workaround path. Got to remember, Windows 10 is coming to end of life here, and Microsoft knows there's going to be a surge of people moving to Windows 11, and they want those juicy account details. And whether or not you like it, that is what Microsoft is doing. And so, yeah, just keep that in mind. So, also, Microsoft announced, I believe it was this week, that Recall is now generally available to all AI Copilot devices. So that's pretty cool, I guess. I mean, I think I've talked about it here before. I have Recall on my primary box now, and it's fine for certain things, I guess. I don't find it exceptionally useful. I'm sure that they're still working on ways to make it more useful, but now it is generally available. And so why would Microsoft be making it now generally available and then doing this? Kapow! There's a Copilot event, a Surface event, 5/6/25. So that is next week. There's going to be a Surface event coming. Microsoft has officially announced it. You can be sure that they're going to be talking about all sorts of AI things. And here's a couple things to think about. we're in that time of the year where Microsoft would be announcing what we would consider 25H2 features, right? They always announce these features in the spring and then they ship them in the fall. So I would expect that we're going to see a bunch of AI stuff coming in Windows. I'm assuming Windows 11 25H2 will be talked about. Here's something else to consider. If you think about back to the earnings back here for a second, Microsoft is completely buried, whatever, Surface hardware sales on this Windows OEM and devices stuff. That's where Surface is buried. All the numbers and why we don't get figures anymore. Even though at one point they had $2 billion in revenue per quarter, we're no longer getting those numbers. Here's what we've been seeing in the trending of Surface, right? Microsoft has really pulled back. They've canceled a lot of devices, the Duo, the whatever, I almost said the Trio, Surface Neo, right? We don't see any more of those fancy computing devices anymore. It's real plain Jane and simple. They're not bad devices. Mind you, I just got a Surface Laptop 7 with the Copilot stuff. And so they're not bad devices. Don't confuse that with pulling back and me saying they're bad. Here, I am wondering. So obviously Microsoft is looking for higher margins in Surface. That's why they're not doing the higher risky stuff. The last remaining component of Surface hardware that is Surface, if you will, is the Connect port. I am wondering out loud on a podcast that thousands of people will watch and listen to across the various audio segments if the Connect port might be going away. I know someone's going to write in and they're going to be absolutely right. Enterprise devices with the Connect port make so much sense, right? They got to keep doing that. I'm just pointing out the fact that Microsoft has really been pulling back on Surface lately. They're trying to make it pretty much commodity based, right? There's no custom componentry. We're not seeing all the crazy fancy stuff. And the only crazy fancy thing that's left is the Surface Connect port. And that era of when the Surface Connect port was useful has kind of come and gone. And so USB-C is the future. If you look at their new devices, you can even charge them via USB-C now. I'm 25H2 hardware or software. Maybe obviously there's Surface hardware. I'll be on the lookout for the Connect port. I'm sure there's been rumors of smaller Surface Pros, right? That sort of thing. Obviously there's Snapdragon stuff, but to me, in my brain, it's the Connect port is the last vestibule, whatever that word is. I'm sure somebody will correct me. Of the Surface era is that Connect port. I look at that as I'm looking at the Connect plugin here. We'll find out. That's next week. Obviously, I'll have all those details as they happen. And moving on to the gaming news, if you will. Xbox in their earnings cited three particular titles, or three particular things for the growth in the content and services. It was Call of Duty, Game Pass, and the Minecraft movie. And so the Minecraft movie actually resulted in about a 75% player-based jump in Minecraft, people coming back to the game after watching Chicken Jockey and Lava Chicken dances, or songs, I should say, from Jack Black, which is a great song, by the way. Jack Black does amazing work. And so, so Xbox beat their estimates of what they were doing. And then what did Microsoft decide to do? Well, they said, hey, we need to increase margin on Xbox. So what are they doing? They're jacking up the prices on all of the hardware. And so here's the official pricing sheet. I believe this is, I believe it's a global thing too, right? There's more than just the US pricing are going up, but we all know why the pricing is going up a lot in the US. So whoops, that's the wrong button there. That is absolutely the wrong button. There we go. That's the right one. I was wrong button. Doesn't matter. Anyway, so this put together by IGN does a really good job of showing the price differences. So the Xbox Series S now starts at $379 for the 512 variant, but the one you really want is the one with the 1 terabyte, which is $429. If you want a Series X, it's now $599, up from $499, and the Series X 2 terabyte is $729. We can all agree that these prices are getting high, and they are getting hard to, I don't want to say justify, but hard to justify, maybe against a PC, if you will. And so, the prices are going up. I'm expecting Sony to do that as well. The other thing to note, too, is game pricing will also be going up to $79.99 starting in the holiday shopping season. So next Call of Duty and whatever title else's are launching then. First party title is going to be 79 bones, dollar dues, if you will. And so that's one way to make more money. Now people are going to rightfully say Microsoft doesn't care about the console. That's why they're doing this. Microsoft has pretty much said, like, if people are going to buy an Xbox, they're going to buy an Xbox. And these are the prices that we got to justify. And so we can't take a loss on these. Prices are not going down. And we all know why they're not. So anyways, Next things up. It was rough in the gaming industry this week. So not to mention console prices going up. EA announced some rather significant layoffs. And a Titanfall title got axed. Polygon got sold. Giant Bomb is technically still there, but it's not. It'll never be what it once was. So, if you've got friends in the gaming community, developers, companies, whatever, just be nice. Just be nice. It's hard out there. And it's not getting any easier right now. So just be nice. But I don't want to end the podcast section on bad news. Bethesda said Oblivion Remastered passed 4 million players. Now, it doesn't mean 4 million sales, because, right, Game Pass subscribers aren't paying for the game again. But 4 million players shows that there's a lot of life left in some of these remasters, or remakes, depending on how you want to split the hair of what is going on. Now, posted the questions of the week. I posted them in a different spot than I usually do, so just so people are aware. So on YouTube, there's a place where you can write posts, and a lot of people watch this on YouTube, and so now I put it there. Maybe we'll keep doing that more and more. I need to zoom in because my eyeballs are not. There we go, so I can read these. Oh gosh, the usernames are even harder on YouTube than. There's my giant cursor. Let's go. So Ismail says, when is Game Pass price increase going to happen, and how much will it be? My guess is 3 to 6 months and about 5 bones for every tier. I don't think that's a bad guess. Wasn't it? So here's the important thing to remember. Last time it was price increased was, I want to say, like in the July timeframe when it was announced. Now, Brad, why was it announced in July? The reason, wonderful question, dear Brad, is that Microsoft's fiscal year ends June 30th. And so they announced that price increase for the year ahead, for the fiscal year ahead, to help increase those revenues, which we just talked about. So the summertime would probably be my expectation, and I think $5 per month is you're probably not too far off. I bet you're probably pretty close. Voldor says, I hope these tariffs don't last, but if conditions don't change when the next generation consoles come, how high do you think they go? My guess was a minimum of $700 to match a PS5 Pro, but I'm starting to think it might be even higher. I think you are correct that it is going to be even higher depending on how this hardware goes. Right now, we're already in this, both companies, Microsoft and Sony, both have $700 plus consoles right now. Right now, you can go buy the top end Xbox Series X. It is over $700 dues. So I think the expectation that next gen consoles are $700 plus, maybe closer to $1,000, is not unreasonable. I don't think that's crazy to. I hate to assume right now, but if the tariffs are the way that they are, and the pricing goes the way that it is. Now, the really interesting thing is, like, when you start getting into that price point, like PC gaming, for $1,000 PC gaming, you can get a 4K 60 frames per second box for $1,000. Now, you're not going to be running super high ultra graphics with the latest ray tracing and everything else, but you can do it. It can be done. You don't buy current generation parts. You go buy a 30. Well, I don't know if you can get a 3090 for $1,000, especially with whatever else. But like a 3080, you could probably do and go get a slightly lower end CPU. I bet it can be done 4K 60 for $1,000 on the PC side. So then like, it's a real challenge, right? And I think maybe Microsoft is going to come away with, I think, in the next generation, if they do what we expect that they're going to do, which is where the Xbox is just an OS, right? There's going to be an official console. Phil Spencer already said that. But like, if you can buy a gaming PC and put an Xbox OS on it and play the games as they are on the console, Microsoft might be looking real smart because, hey, you remember, this is an Xbox. Remember that whole campaign that's still ongoing forever and always? Well, if you can go buy that $1,000 gaming PC, you would get a lot more utility out of it than just a $1,000 console. So it'll be interesting to see. Mr. DB Cross says, is this the new place for the questions going forward for all of us insiders? It might be. I think it makes more sense for me to be posting more on the channel that is, 50,000 plus than some other third party. Nothing against Paul Thurrott. Paul Thurrott is a great friend, but I think it makes more sense to consolidate my questions on my own plane of existence, if you will. So maybe this will be it. Nin Master says, with Microsoft increasing their first party games to $80 dues this holiday, how much of the price increase would you expect for Game Pass? I think Ismail said $5 per month is probably, I suspect that's what it's going to be. I think it probably, Is it $19.99? Yeah, it's exactly $19.99. So if it would $5 increase, I was gonna say $24.99 is probably what I was gonna expect. So we will see. The thing is like Microsoft has lined themselves up to like really justify it. They're like, look at all these games that just came out, right? You got Indie, you've got Avowed, you've got Doom, you've got South of Midnight, and you got Call of Duty Black Ops in there. I'm probably even missing some. And these are all in the past few months, and it's like, yeah, if you were buying all those titles, that's a lot of money. It is a lot of money. Super Bitology says, I don't know if you can talk about the Xbox leak that came out last year or 2023. Do you still see Xbox dropping physical media altogether for their next gen console or not? Here is what I would expect. I have like really strong reservations that I think they will. However, I think there will be some weird middle ground where you can buy like an external DVD drive, right? The problem with getting rid of physical media is like we all relatively agree. I know there's going to be people who push against this, but relatively speaking, the digital format is superior, right? You just go click download whatever and it's all there. It's not perfect, right? Because things happen and things don't work or whatever. But really game preservation and just that nostalgia, right? Especially people who are my age and older, remember opening up and like reading the manuals, right? Maybe you'd open the box and like the little pamphlet would fall out and it'd be a piece of art. By today's standards, it would be art. Those user manuals from back then, and some of them were like the big foldy sheets of paper that came out and were huge. Those were awesome. And that's all going away. Now I expect that these companies will not give up on some physical media, and I mean like the super high-end premium boxes, right? The premium tier or the ultimate supreme box, the $129 SKU. There's margin in there. And so I don't like, that's where my brain is like, well, maybe they'll just put like an SD card in there or a download code or something like that for the physical game nostalgia. But like, then that means I need to have a disc. But what a disc these days is not what we were growing up with, where it was like, that was the game. Now it's just a license entitlement. And then you go download the game. But the whole concept of needing a physical drive is really changed, which makes you wonder, like, think about this for a second. If they truly dump physical media, but they want to have a physical media presence, couldn't they just use a CD-ROM drive and just put like a little license entitlement file on there? You don't need a Blu-ray drive, although Blu-ray drives are probably cheap as chips these days. But I believe you do have to pay a royalty. So they could just go plain Jane CD. It's just downloading it anyway. It's very similar to what Nintendo does with some of their cartridges. And bada bing, bada boom. That would be it, my friends. So super interesting stuff this week. Super interesting. Xbox seems to be doing well. They're going to make more money per console. They're going to sell fewer consoles. That's for darn sure. But they're going to make more money doing it if they sell them. But they're overall. But anyways, they say judge us by our content and services. Surface event next week. Let's keep our eyes and ears peeled to see what they do or do not announce. And as always, my friends, make sure to keep it subscribed here because only BS on this podcast is me.